The first option we're going to look at here on the premium version of Edulastic is the assigning options. To get to these assigning options, you can either use the question bank or use the library to get to the assign screen. And I'm just going to show you the question bank way, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that. All I need to do is use my filters, find some questions here, add it to my assessment, click on review, give my assessment a name, and publish or assign. And now I'm on my assign screen. With your free account, you are able to use the Release Scores button. What this button does is it allows the students to submit their test and immediately get their results. They were able to see that they got a 73 on their assessment and that they missed questions 1 and 3, but they also saw that the correct answer was A. And now the students are going to give that answer to somebody else. Or when they take a retake, they're now going to know what the correct answer was. We have this show questions to students after submission, and this button is going to allow you to turn that off, and they will no longer be able to click on an individual question and see what the correct answer was, or even go back and read the question again. It will tell them that they got a 73 and that they missed question 1 and 3. So if you're planning on giving retakes or giving this assessment to multiple classes, we suggest leaving the release scores on, but turning off the show questions to students after submission. The next feature we're going to look at is Require Safe Exam Browser. Requiring the Safe Exam Browser is going to lock down the student's device. This means that they can't go to Google to search for an answer or to find a calculator, and the only things they can do is take the Edulastic test. With this, you are going to need to download something, so make sure you speak to your tech people for your school or for your district to see if this is available for you. It's also only available for Windows and Mac computers. We do have a kiosk mode, but that is not the same thing as Safe Exam Browser, and it does not require you to come into Superpowers and turn anything on. The next thing we'll take a look at is Shuffle Questions and Shuffle Answer Choices. This is going to allow you to switch up the order of the questions and the answers so the students can't look at each other's screens and try to write down what the correct answers were. Also, it's not going to allow them to write down the choice was A and give it to their neighbor or somebody in the next class. The one thing to note here is on Shuffle Answer Choice, if text-to-speech is enabled, this is not going to work. So if you're using text-to-speech, make sure that this option is turned off, or be prepared to read to your students instead of using the text-to-speech option for that assessment. The next option we'll look at here is the Show Calculator. If you're familiar with Desmos, these calculators are the Desmos calculators, so this will be both familiar to you and your students. Something to note here with the calculator is that you're enabling it for the entire test. There is no way to give it to certain students or to give it on certain questions. So just note that this will be a little icon at the top of each question for the students. Answer on paper. And this is just going to make it so that the students can access the assessment online. What you'll have to do as a teacher is go in and use our Express Grader to manually grade this assessment. You could also use the bubble sheet option, which we have an app for on your phone called SnapScore, and print out bubble sheets for the assessment and just scan it right from your phone. That's going to automatically put in the responses and the grades if they're bubble choices, like multi-select or multiple choice. And then from there, you can just go in and use our Express Grader to manually input the grades or scores that the students have received. With the Require Password, this is going to make it so that students in other classes or students that were absent that day can't access the assessment unless they're in your class. This is a great idea for test security. Finally, we have Evaluation Method. With Evaluation Method, it's important to note that this don't penalize for incorrect selection means that the students can select all of the options and get a 100% on that question. Now, most of the time, the students don't do that, so it's not a big deal. But if you notice that your students are doing that, it might be important to come in and change this. Just click it, turn it off. Now the students will be accurately graded based on choosing the correct answers and not choosing the incorrect answers. I mentioned earlier that you have the ability to print a bubble sheet and record the students' answers using an app called SnapScore. I'm going to go ahead and show you that here using our SnapScore bubble sheet assessment. And I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to find the class that I want to give the bubble sheets to. Click Actions and Generate Bubble Sheet. It's going to go ahead and start generating bubble sheet up here, and then now it's going to say, click here to download the bubble sheet. Now, if you ever didn't see that pop up and it wasn't coming up right away, you might need to come over here to Actions and click Download Bubble Sheet. Our bubble sheet is going to give us some important information, like the student's name, the class they're a part of, the teacher's name, and then what the assessment is called. You can see the student's bubbles here, as well as the QR code that is unique to that specific student. So that way, it can be read into Edulastic, and we make sure we give the data to the right student. If you ever see a blank in one of these spots, that is because it's a question type that does not have bubbles, maybe a match the following or a text response, and in that case, you just go to the Express Grader and grade it yourself. I've mentioned a few times now about something called the Express Grader. You might have already seen it. It's on the exact same screen that you used to find your students' responses on. To find it, we're just going to click Assessments. We're going to find the assessment we want and click it, and then find the class we want to check out and click it. Now this is the same screen you've always seen, the same colors, the bar graph, everything like that. The only few differences here are these three options: Express Grader, Reports, and Present, as well as some of these options in the More button. If you were to use the Mark as Absent button, that's very similar to the Pause button. But the Pause button makes it so none of the students have access to the assessment until you resume the test, but Mark as Absent is going to allow you to choose individual students to not have access. This is great for when a student is not in class and should not have access when they're at home or if they're in a different class. You'll also see some additional options here, like download grades and responses. What we're going to do now is we're going to check out that Express Grader I mentioned earlier. When there, you're going to see a much cleaner view that allows you to look at all of the students' responses rather than the normal of scrolling down and trying to find out what the next student put. What's great about this view is I can see the student scores and I can see the individual question percentage for the students, and then I can even click right on these arrows to make the incorrect answers go up top. This is going to be great for looking for trends. I am now able to see that most of the students that got this one wrong, in this case all of the students that got this one wrong, chose the answer B. And now I'm able to go in and click and figure out why students were choosing B. I'm also able to come over to question 3 here and click, and then find out that we're at 60%, but really 4 people had partial credit. They kind of got it. Or question 4, that really struggled here. These are saying TEI, and that's just standing for Technology Enhanced Item. All we have to do is click just to find out what the question and the answers were. Now you can imagine a technology enhanced item like this one, which is a multi-part question, would be way too big to try and show in this little box. If you've ever thought about showing this to your students, we don't necessarily want the students to see their name because then they're going to be more focused on themselves and trying to compare them to their friends. So what we decided to do is create this present button. And when I click on that, it just gives them these little fun names that allows you to show these results. Click and then say, students, I noticed that a misconception was that we thought the answer was B. So why did we choose B? And then we can talk about that with our students and try to figure out ways to not miss that question in the future or better understand it, or try to understand why people chose B in the first place. And you notice that right up here, the name is Orange Shop. It no longer says what the actual student's name is. Same thing over here on the side. It says red puzzle, orange shop, brown binoculars, green donut, and so on. To change the view that you're looking at in view mode, you can only click in view. But in score entry, you can actually change the score. And we're going to need to reset our present button. So then we see the students' names. And we're going to go to score entry. And it's very easy. You go to question 1, and let's say you're doing this on paper and you've just graded all of them and you just need to come in and give them their scores. I go to Susan Anthony on question 1. I type in her score, press enter, go to the next student, type in their score, next student, type in their score, and so on. So all I'm doing here is I'm just clicking a number and then clicking the enter button. Nice and simple. It changes the values quickly, and it's a great way to regrade assessments really quickly. And then finally, I also have the response entry. And response entry is another great way to manually grade assessments, because if you're using multiple choice or multi-selection question, you can actually go in there and just put their answer, and it will automatically grade for you. So this makes it so the students can take the assessment on paper, but still allow you to auto-grade by simply typing in their responses in this response entry through ExpressGrader. So I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like. You can see the colors are changing. And so that's just automatically changing the score and changing the color to represent if it's correct or incorrect. Final thing we'll look at here is the reports. So this is just to the right of ExpressGrader, and reports is going to give us 6 different single assessment reports that's going to provide us with some extra data, as well as student report cards. That's going to be great to print out for student conferences, parent conferences, or to send home so the parents can see how their students are doing on recent assessments. I'll go ahead and click Generate Report Cards, and you're going to see that it gives the breakdown of the students' answers, scores, and how they did. As I move down, it's also going to show the standards that were attached to the questions and if they got them correct, or in this case down here, if they got it incorrect through this little blue button right here. To print this, all you need to do is press Control P or Command P, depending if you have a Windows or Mac computer, to bring up the print options. We're going to go over these more as a general overview rather than a deep dive, because we have an additional 13 reports, somewhere around there, and with that many reports, it's going to take us all day to go over all of them. Starting with assessment summary here, just a nice little view that's going to give you some quick overview data of that assessment. The average student score, the actual score out of how many points, students assigned, students graded, and then the comparison between your classes. Obviously, this is a great look if you have the same assessment being given to multiple periods, and then you're able to kind of compare, what did I do more in period 2 than I did in period 1? Did I spend more time, less distractions because it's not the morning time? What happened differently there? I can go to peer performance, and in peer performance, get the breakdown just like I did before, but this is more a comparison of the different classes that you have. Now this is compare by class. If you've set up different advanced options for your students like race, gender, FRL status, ELL status, IEP status, you can filter by that to get those students. We'll go to question analysis, and with this report, you're going to get the breakdown of how they did on the questions, and I can quickly see on questions 1, 6, 8, 5, and 9, the students are really excelling at 89% or higher, and then questions 3, 7, and 4 are struggling points for the students. As I scroll down, it's going to give me that exact order. Question 4 is the lowest. Question 7 is the second lowest. And that's going to give me the standards, so then I know what standards I need to go work on the students with. This is the breakdown by class, so I can see the real clear difference on question 1 here, that period 1 is scoring at an 80% and period 2 is 100%. So obviously if I looked at question 1 earlier, it said 89%. Well, 89% is because one of the class periods is scoring at 100%. As I come up to the top, I'm going to click on response frequency. And from here, you're going to be able to get the breakdown of the students' responses. So whether they're correct or incorrect. More noticeably, it's going to be in the multiple selection or multiple choice options when you can see if they're choosing, A more often than B or B more often than C, and so on. You can change those thresholds here to allow for more to show up as orange or less to show up. So this is at 53%. I'm going to move this up to 54, and you're going to see that turn a different color. So now that went to gray. What I really like about this view that's a little bit different is the question types are being shown at the bottom. Now, obviously, we don't teach to the test. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're teaching the standards. However, it's really nice to know that if the students are constantly missing a multi-part or multi-selection question here, that the students need to work on those question types. We don't want to teach question types, but with the assessments that they're taking at the end of the year, having those question types, it's important that they do know those question types and that they're familiar and comfortable with them. So they're more focused on the math or the English part of it rather than how do I manipulate this question to do what I want it to do. Next is performance by standards. In performance by standards, I'm getting the breakdown of the standards that were on the assessment and how they did. I have it set to compare by students right now, so I get a nice colorful chart to look at all of the students. Or I can do compare by class, and that's going to allow me to see the class averages for the standards. I'll click on performance by students here, and this is going to give me the proficiency bands of the students, like advanced, mastery, or basic. And this is going to show me how they were doing on the assessment overall compared to the class and the school average. When looking here, this is great for pre and post test. So then I can say the students started at a 2 to 3, but then most of them moved up to the 6 to 10 range. Looking at the single assessment reports, I think it's necessary to talk about the additional reports you have. And we can do that using this reports button in our gray navigation bar. As I mentioned, you have an additional 13 reports when you go to the premium version, which includes the original 6 we showed, these three, and then the standards performance summary. This gradebook is actually free to users, so we're not going to touch on that one or the standards performance summary today, but we're going to go to performance over time, which is our multiple assessment reports. And this is going to allow us to look at the progress over time to see how students are doing or how the classes are doing. I'm able to look here and see that we have some greens here, but then a yellow, a green, a red, and then kind of a lighter green here. So I would say that the trend is kind of going both ways right now. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on this pure progress analysis. And I'm going to look at the different class periods and just find the trends in those classes. How are the students doing? So I have 3 classes on the right trend, 1 class just kind of laying even. And then finally, student progress. And this is going to show me the student progress. And you can see many of these trends are going down. Something to note here with these trends is you might have different subjects or you might have different domains within the standards you're looking at or assessments you're looking at, and that's going to cause this trend to go up and down. So what you might want to do is use the Refine Results button up at the top right, find the specific assessments you want. So then you're comparing assessments rather than just comparing any old assessment out there regardless of topic. So now that's going to allow me to compare between the two assessments. You can even come up here to all courses and then just choose, I want to look at the grade 6 mathematics test. And that's going to allow you to look at only grade 6 mathematics test rather than math and English. I can do by class, so then I can only look at period 1 if I wanted to. And then, as I said, you can do the all assessments again. So then you're comparing by domain rather than comparing a geometry post-test to an algebra pre-test. Obviously, the trend is going to go down because a pre-test is something the students probably don't know yet. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the student profile report. And this is a great report if you're looking at individual students. I'll go ahead and click on the first one here. It's going to bring me up a student, and if I didn't want to look at Abraham Lincoln, maybe I was doing an IEP meeting or a meeting with the parent and I wanted to look at a specific student, again, we'll click Refine Results. Click on the name up here and just type in a new name. I'm going to go ahead and type in Susan because I know I have Susan Anthony here, and I'll go to her. And then now you'll see her results. Just showing me that same progress over time here. But as I go along here, you can see the domains and how the students are doing with the domains. I can go to Student Mastery Profile, and that's going to give me the breakdown of the standards in that domain that the student has taken. And then as you scroll down, it's going to do the same thing, giving you the breakdown of the standards the students have taken and their mastery level. So not mastery here because they took one assessment with 2 questions and got a 0 out of it. Finally, we can come up here to Student Assessment Profile, and this is just going to show the assessments that the student has taken. Obviously, a great look here for parents to be able to show the trend over time or possibly just show them the overall average the student is getting. We're now going to look at the Manage Class button and the additional features you have inside of there. I'm going to click on Manage Class, click on my class, and then I'm going to check out this Action button. There's a few options in here that have now changed. We have Enable Text-to-Speech and Disable Text-to-Speech, and we also have the ability to add a co-teacher. A co-teacher is going to give them all of the same access to your class that you have as the teacher. It's going to be great for push-in teachers, intervention teachers, coaches, or another teacher you're teaching with, so then they can go in, assign assessments, or get data as needed. It's important to note with that, we don't have a way right now to be able to take out a co-teacher, so once you add them in there, you won't be able to take them out. To enable text-to-speech, click on the box of the students you want to give text-to-speech to, and click Enable Text-to-Speech. Now it's going to show text-to-speech enabled on both of those students. The next feature we're going to look at is going back to our Assessments tab and looking at Redirect. So we're on the Assessments button here, clicking on an assessment that's already been taken, or maybe a student was absent, or the assessment closed and I need to open it back up for my students. I just click on the assessment, click on the class, and then now I'm in. I'm going to find the student I want to redirect, click on the student, redirect, and then now I'm going to have some superpower options here that we didn't have before. Show previous response is a way that they can see the previous responses if they need to finish their assessment, or you can turn that off so then they're just starting from scratch. The show correct or incorrect feedback is a way that the students can see which questions they need to change. It won't tell them what the correct answer was, but it will tell them that they missed number 1, so then they know to change that, but not change number 2 because they got that one correct. After you set those settings, you can just go ahead and click Redirect, and now it's going to assign it to that student. Adding a co-author to an assessment. There's 2 places you can do this. One, while you're creating the assessment, so going to my question bank, choosing a question and going to review. There is a co-author button that you can click on and then add the co-author here. Or if you've already had an assessment created, you can find it inside your library, authored by me, find the assessment in draft mode, and then click Add a Co-Author. It's important to note that the assessment has to be in draft form. So if you find an assessment like this that is in published form, you can just click on it and then go to edit to then take it out of published mode.